Seniors, when you wake up in the morning, you probably don't give much thought to what you're about to eat. Maybe you've had the same breakfast for years, a habit that feels comfortable, familiar, but here's a truth most people never hear: the very first thing you put in your mouth every single morning could quietly be sabotaging your heart health. Yes, breakfast may seem harmless, but for people over 60, your metabolism, hormones, blood vessels, and heart respond very differently to food than they did decades ago. And what feels like a small, simple habit, skipping breakfast, reaching for something sugary, pouring that comforting cup of sweetened coffee, could slowly be triggering a cascade of dangerous changes inside your body. Now, I'm not saying this to frighten you. I'm saying this because millions of seniors are suffering preventable heart problems, and they have no idea their morning habits are part of the problem. Years of silent damage accumulate, day after day, breakfast after breakfast. But you're not helpless. Once you understand how these habits affect your heart and why your body reacts differently after 60, you gain tremendous power to change your health trajectory. In this video, we're going to uncover the 5 worst breakfast mistakes that quietly destroy heart health in seniors. We'll go deep into each one based on scientific studies simplified for you. And I'll save the absolute worst for last, a habit that millions commit every single day without even thinking. If you care about protecting your heart, your circulation, your independence, stay with me to the very end. Let's get started. For decades, breakfast has been called the most important meal of the day. But in recent years, many people have started skipping it, influenced by trends like intermittent fasting. Some believe skipping breakfast can help with weight control, or even extend lifespan. But seniors after age 60, your body operates under a very different set of rules. And skipping breakfast may quietly set off a chain reaction that damages your cardiovascular system in ways that few people understand. Let's begin with cortisol, your primary stress hormone. Every morning, your body naturally produces cortisol to help wake you up, but when you skip breakfast, cortisol levels stay elevated even longer. That prolonged cortisol surge may not feel dramatic. You might not feel anxious or stressed, but inside your body, it quietly triggers multiple dangerous processes. A 2017 study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that older adults have a much slower recovery from morning cortisol elevations when fasting. This matters because high cortisol leads to increased blood pressure, higher blood sugar, central abdominal fat accumulation, and most concerning, direct damage to your arterial walls through chronic inflammation. High cortisol isn't just a hormone problem. It activates your sympathetic nervous system, your body's fight-or-flight response. That system causes your heart rate to rise, your blood vessels to constrict, and your blood pressure to spike. If you're 25, your blood vessels bounce back quickly, but after 60, they're stiffer, less elastic, and less able to adapt. These daily stress responses add up. And there's another danger. Most seniors don't think about blood viscosity when you wake up. You're already slightly dehydrated from overnight fasting. Breakfast is not just fuel, it's hydration. Skipping breakfast delays rehydration, leaving your blood slightly thicker. Thicker blood is harder to pump. Imagine your heart trying to push syrup instead of water through your arteries. That extra effort stresses your heart muscle daily. A study in the American Journal of Cardiology linked elevated blood viscosity directly to higher rates of clot formation and cardiovascular events, especially in seniors. Then comes the issue of insulin sensitivity. By delaying food intake, your body remains in a state where it has to generate glucose internally through gluconeogenesis. Breaking down muscle proteins to maintain blood sugar levels, this creates metabolic strain. Over time, it worsens insulin resistance, which is strongly linked to cardiovascular disease. A major cohort study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology tracked over 6,500 adults for years and found that those who skipped breakfast regularly had an 87% higher risk of death from cardiovascular causes. That's nearly doubling your risk simply from skipping your first meal of the day. Finally, let's talk about arrhythmias. Cortisol spikes combined with sympathetic activation can disrupt normal heart rhythm, especially in seniors already prone to atrial fibrillation, or premature beats. Many people don't realize that fasting-induced stress responses can be arrhythmogenic, particularly in older, more vulnerable hearts. Now, you may be wondering if skipping breakfast is so risky. Why don't we feel immediate symptoms? Why don't we get warning signals? That's precisely what makes this habit so dangerous. The damage accumulates silently. Day after day, your heart works harder under subtle but constant strain. Your arteries endure microtraumas. Your blood pressure fluctuates more than it should. And after years, those microscopic changes grow into real blockages, stiffened arteries, or dangerous heart rhythms. But here's the good news. You can reverse this risk almost immediately, simply by eating a small, balanced breakfast. Even something as simple as oatmeal with berries and a glass of water. You start your day by stabilizing blood sugar, lowering cortisol, rehydrating your blood, and protecting your heart. Skipping breakfast may seem harmless, but after 60, it's one of the most underestimated threats to long-term cardiovascular health. Now let's move to one of the most deceptive dangers facing seniors every morning. High-sugar breakfast foods. You've seen them on grocery shelves, colorful boxes of cereal, breakfast bars, pastries, muffins, and packaged sweet rolls. Many carry labels like whole grain, high fiber, or vitamin fortified, giving the illusion that they're somehow good for your health. But don't be fooled for your heart. These options are metabolic landmines. When you consume these sugary breakfast items, your blood sugar skyrockets within minutes. Glucose floods your bloodstream, and your pancreas responds by releasing a surge of insulin to shuttle that sugar into your cells. But here's where aging changes everything. After 60, your body becomes less sensitive to insulin. The cells don't respond as well as they used to. This means your pancreas has to work harder, pumping out more insulin to manage the same amount of sugar. Over time, this leads to insulin resistance, one of the strongest drivers of metabolic syndrome, a dangerous combination of high blood pressure, high blood sugar, elevated triglycerides, and abdominal obesity, all of which feed directly into cardiovascular disease. A study published in Diabetes Care demonstrated that seniors exhibit prolonged blood sugar spikes after eating high glycemic foods compared to younger individuals. These extended glucose surges don't just fade away, they leave a trail of microscopic damage inside your arteries every time they happen. Now, let's talk about oxidative stress, one of the most dangerous processes triggered by high blood sugar. Oxidative stress refers to the excessive production of free radicals, unstable molecules that attack the lining of your blood vessels, called the endothelium. The endothelium is like a protective inner skin for your arteries, keeping them smooth and elastic. Once damaged, cholesterol particles penetrate more easily, sticking to the walls and beginning the plaque-building process that narrows arteries. In a 2020 study published in Arteriosclerosis, Thrombosis, and Vascular Biology, researchers found that just one meal high in sugar could impair endothelial function for several hours, even in healthy adults. Imagine what repeated daily sugar spikes do to arteries that are already more fragile after 60. But that's not the end of the danger. High sugar intake also fuels chronic inflammation. After sugary breakfasts, inflammatory molecules like protein CRP, interleukin-6, IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF-alpha, rise in your bloodstream. You don't feel these molecules circulating. They don't make you feel sick, but they create a slow-burning fire inside your arteries, making them stiff, less flexible, and more prone to rupture. Of the most respected long-term studies in cardiovascular research, clearly demonstrated that high sugar consumption strongly correlates with arterial stiffness, elevated blood pressure, and higher risk of heart attacks and strokes, especially in older adults. And let's not forget triglycerides. Excess sugar that isn't immediately used by your cells gets converted into triglycerides by your liver. High triglyceride levels are directly linked to plaque formation, contributing to the narrowing of arteries and reducing blood flow to your heart. Seniors, what makes sugary breakfasts so dangerous is how common they are. You might think a small bowl of cereal or a quick pastry is harmless, but inside your body, this daily sugar flood triggers dangerous biochemical responses that silently accumulate, and unlike dramatic health events, this damage is invisible. In the short term, you don't feel your arteries stiffening. You don't feel the inflammatory cytokines circulating. But day after day, year after year, These sugar-induced insults quietly erode your cardiovascular stability until one day a blockage forms, a plaque ruptures, or your blood pressure climbs to unsafe levels. The good news, this is completely reversible. Reducing your intake of refined sugar and choosing balanced breakfasts stabilizes your blood sugar, reduces inflammation, and protects your endothelium. Whole grains, fiber-rich fruits, healthy fats, and lean proteins calm your metabolism and provide nutrients that directly support heart function. Sugary cereals and pastries may seem like a harmless indulgence, but after 60, they become one of the most powerful contributors to silent cardiovascular decline. Now let's move to a breakfast tradition that feels deeply American. Processed breakfast meats, bacon, sausage, ham, deli meats. These salty, savory items are beloved by millions. For many seniors, they feel like a comforting, protein-rich way to start the day. But inside your body, especially after age 60, they create a perfect storm of cardiovascular damage. The first danger is sodium. Processed breakfast meats are absolutely packed with salt. Just 2 strips of bacon or a single sausage patty can contain 300 to 500 milligrams of sodium. Combine that with other foods throughout your day, and you quickly surpass the recommended daily sodium limit. Excess sodium causes your body to retain fluid. This increases the volume of blood circulating through your arteries, forcing your heart to pump harder with each beat. Over time, this extra workload causes the heart muscle to thicken, a condition called left ventricular hypertrophy, which is a major predictor of heart failure and sudden cardiac events in a randomized trial published in Hypertension. Seniors consuming high-sodium diets experienced significant and sustained increases in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, even after just a few weeks. And when blood pressure rises in older adults, arteries that have already lost some flexibility struggle to absorb that added pressure, increasing the risk of arterial tears, aneurysms, and strokes. But sodium is only one part of the problem. Processed meats are preserved with nitrates and nitrites, compounds added to enhance color, flavor, and shelf life. Once inside your body, these substances can form nitrosamines, which are strongly linked to vascular inflammation, oxidative stress, and even DNA damage inside your blood vessels. The European Prospective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition EPIC study, one of the largest dietary studies in the world, followed nearly 450,000 people for years and found that high consumption of processed meats was associated with a 72% higher risk of death from cardiovascular disease. That's nearly 3/4 greater risk, driven in part by these nitrosamine-induced vascular insults. Then comes the issue of saturated fat. Processed breakfast meats contain high amounts of saturated fats, which elevate LDL cholesterol levels, particularly the dangerous, small, dense LDL particles that are most prone to oxidation. Once oxidized, these particles become sticky, burrowing into damaged endothelial tissue and forming the plaques that narrow arteries dot in a longitudinal study published in Circulation. Researchers demonstrated that regular consumption of processed meats directly correlated with higher coronary artery calcification scores, a concrete measurement of plaque buildup in seniors. But it doesn't stop there. Processed meats also fuel systemic inflammation by increasing circulating levels of interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein, both potent inflammatory markers that directly correlate with plaque instability and rupture risk. When plaques rupture, they can trigger immediate and life-threatening heart attacks or strokes. For seniors, this is a multi-pronged biochemical assault happening silently. Sodium elevates blood pressure. Nitrates generate inflammatory saturated fat increases plaque formation. Inflammation destabilizes arterial walls, all from what feels like a simple traditional breakfast. What makes this even more dangerous is that processed breakfast meats are habit-forming. They're highly palatable, salty, savory, filling, and marketed as high-protein options, giving them a false health halo. But for an aging cardiovascular system, this daily assault builds slowly and invisibly until one day a major event occurs, seemingly out of nowhere. The solution? Shift toward unprocessed, lean protein sources for breakfast: boiled eggs, wild-caught fish, unsweetened yogurt, or plant-based protein sources like nuts and seeds. These nourish your body without loading your arteries with sodium, preservatives, and unhealthy fats. Processed breakfast meats don't just taste salty. They quietly create the biochemical foundation for heart disease with every bite, especially dangerous for seniors who may have unknowingly accumulated years of silent damage. Let's now turn to a breakfast habit that seems almost harmless, simple, comforting: a slice of toast with a pat of butter or margarine. Many seniors have started their mornings this way for decades, but hidden inside that seemingly innocent choice are multiple silent threats to your cardiovascular system. First, let's talk about margarine, often marketed as a healthier alternative to butter. Decades ago, people were encouraged to switch to margarine to reduce their intake of saturated fat. But many margarine formulations, especially older ones, still found in some households, contain trans fats, arguably the most dangerous fats for your heart. Trans fats are created through a chemical process called partial hydrogenation, which turns liquid oils into semi-solid fats to improve shelf life and texture. But inside your body, trans fats are like a molecular wrecking ball for your arteries. They don't just raise LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, they also lower HDL cholesterol, which normally helps protect your arteries. This combination leaves your arteries unprotected and vulnerable to plaque formation. Even more dangerous is trans fat's direct effect on your endothelium, the thin inner lining of your blood vessels. Trans fats induce oxidative stress and systemic inflammation that stiffen the endothelium, reduce nitric oxide availability, which is essential for vessel flexibility, and create ideal conditions for plaques to form and grow. A landmark study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that even small amounts of trans fat increase the risk of coronary heart disease by over 25%. Another large-scale study from the Harvard Nurses' Health Study found that women consuming just 2% of their daily calories from trans fats had a 93% higher risk of heart attack compared to those who avoided them. Although regulations have reduced trans fats in many foods, trace amounts may still exist in older margarine brands, baked goods, and processed breakfast products that seniors may unknowingly continue to consume. Now, let's shift to butter. While butter may contain less trans fat, it's still high in saturated fat, particularly palmitic and stearic acids, which elevate LDL cholesterol. But it's not simply about high cholesterol. The real threat arises when these LDL particles become oxidized inside your arteries. Oxidized LDL is sticky, inflammatory, and directly fuels plaque growth. A comprehensive meta-analysis published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology showed that replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats led to significant reductions in coronary events, particularly in older adults. And now we must address the toast itself, specifically when it's made with refined white bread. White bread is rapidly broken down into glucose by your digestive system, triggering immediate blood sugar spikes. We've already seen how these glucose surges fuel oxidative stress, endothelial dysfunction, and systemic inflammation, all of which erode arterial health over time. So when you combine butter or margarine's lipid-driven endothelial injury with white bread's glucose-driven oxidative damage, you're essentially delivering a double attack on your arteries every single morning. To make matters worse, the damage is invisible in the short term. You won't feel your arteries stiffening. After eating buttered toast, you won't feel the inflammatory cytokines rising in your bloodstream. But over the years, those daily micro-injuries accumulate until one day, a small piece of unstable plaque ruptures, triggering a life-threatening clot. After 60, every opportunity to reduce this silent inflammation counts. The solution isn't complicated, but it requires awareness. Choose whole grain breads rich in fiber, paired with heart-healthy spreads like natural nut butters, avocado, or even a light drizzle of olive oil. These choices nourish your body while actively protecting your endothelium and supporting optimal blood flow. Your breakfast should stabilize your metabolism, not quietly attack your arteries. After 60, what feels harmless can quietly become dangerous unless you take control. Now, seniors, we arrive at the most dangerous breakfast mistake of all, and it's one that millions of people over 60 commit every single morning without thinking twice. In fact, many believe they're making a smarter choice. It's your morning coffee loaded with artificial sweeteners and flavored creamers. Let's carefully break down why this seemingly innocent habit becomes a potent cardiovascular threat, especially after 60. First, let's address caffeine. Caffeine stimulates your central nervous system, increasing both heart rate and blood pressure. In younger individuals, the body compensates quickly, but after 60, your body's baroreceptors, specialized sensors that help regulate blood pressure, become less responsive. This means caffeine-induced spikes can persist longer and create a heavier daily burden on your cardiovascular system. A comprehensive 2016 meta-analysis in the American Journal of Hypertension found that in older adults, even moderate habitual caffeine intake was associated with sustained elevations in systolic and diastolic blood pressure, especially during the first few hours after consumption. Chronic morning spikes, repeated daily, add cumulative strain to arteries that are already less elastic with age. But caffeine alone isn't the worst part. Millions of seniors add artificial sweeteners like aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, or asulfame potassium, believing they're healthier alternatives to sugar. Unfortunately, emerging science tells a more alarming story. These artificial sweeteners may disrupt your gut microbiome, the complex community of trillions of bacteria living in your intestines, which play an essential role in controlling metabolism, inflammation, and even cardiovascular function. A 2021 study published in Nature Medicine linked changes in gut bacteria from artificial sweetener consumption to increased insulin resistance, elevated triglycerides, and heightened systemic inflammation, all of which directly elevate cardiovascular risk. When your gut microbiota shifts into an imbalanced state, a condition known as dysbiosis, harmful metabolic byproducts like trimethylamine, unoxide TMAO, increase. Elevated TMAO levels have been independently linked to atherosclerosis progression and higher risks of heart attacks, strokes, and heart failure. And still, we're not done. Many commercial-flavored creamers contain a chemical cocktail of partially hydrogenated oils, hidden trans fats, added sugars, synthetic emulsifiers, stabilizers, and artificial flavorings. These compounds promote systemic inflammation, elevate triglyceride levels, impair endothelial function, and can even trigger arrhythmias, particularly dangerous for seniors already vulnerable to atrial fibrillation or ventricular ectopy. A large cohort study published in the Journal of the American Heart Association showed that seniors consuming higher amounts of ultra-processed foods, including artificially sweetened, flavored creamers, had significantly higher rates of heart failure, arrhythmias, and stroke events. Let's connect all these factors. Caffeine strains your autonomic nervous system and elevates blood pressure. Artificial sweeteners disrupt your microbiome, promoting metabolic dysfunction. Flavored creamers introduce inflammatory fats and chemicals that quietly attack your arteries. Individually, each component is problematic, but combined, every single morning they form a daily biochemical assault that accelerates endothelial dysfunction, arterial stiffness, systemic inflammation, and dangerous plaque buildup. You might think, but I've had sweet coffee for years and feel fine. That's precisely why this habit is so insidious. The damage is slow, silent, and cumulative. Arteries gradually narrow, plaques quietly grow, heart rhythm becomes subtly more unstable, and then seemingly out of nowhere comes the heart attack, stroke, or sudden arrhythmia episode. But there's hope. You don't need to give up coffee entirely. Simply changing how you drink it makes a profound difference. Drink coffee black, or with just a small splash of unsweetened almond milk, oat milk, or regular milk. Eliminate artificial sweeteners entirely. Avoid flavored creamers loaded with chemical additives. Use cinnamon or a few drops of pure vanilla extract for natural flavor enhancement. By making these adjustments, you preserve your coffee ritual without silently sacrificing your arteries every morning. Among all the breakfast mistakes we've discussed, this one combines nervous system strain, metabolic disruption, inflammatory chemicals, and direct endothelial injury all in one cup. And for seniors, after 60, this combination quietly drives cardiovascular decline more than almost any other daily habit. Seniors, let's take a deep breath and review what we've uncovered together. We've exposed 5 of the most dangerous breakfast mistakes quietly: sabotaging heart health after 60, skipping breakfast triggers harmful cortisol surges, blood pressure, instability, dehydration, and chronic sympathetic nervous system activation. straining your heart from the moment you wake up. High-sugar cereals and pastries flood your bloodstream with glucose, causing oxidative stress, endothelial damage, systemic inflammation, and triglyceride buildup, silently eroding arterial health one spike at a time. Processed breakfast meats assault your cardiovascular system with sodium, nitrates, saturated fats, and pro-inflammatory compounds, building plaque, raising blood pressure, and stiffening arteries with each salty bite. Buttered toasts with margarine combine trans fats, oxidized LDL cholesterol, and refined carbs, delivering a dual assault on your arteries every single morning. And finally, the most dangerous, coffee loaded with artificial sweeteners and flavored creamers, creating a perfect biochemical storm of nervous system stress, gut microbiome disruption, inflammatory lipids, and endothelial dysfunction. It's frightening. When you realize how common these habits are, millions of seniors repeat these choices daily, unaware that they're stacking the odds against their own heart health. The damage is silent, cumulative, and unforgiving. But here's the powerful truth you need to hear. You can change this starting tomorrow. Your arteries are not passive victims. They are dynamic, living tissues capable of healing and regeneration. Even after years of silent injury, if you give them the right environment, you don't need extreme diets or complicated programs. You need small, consistent shifts that stabilize your metabolism, lower inflammation, and protect your vascular system every single morning. Hydrate upon waking. A simple glass of water with a squeeze of lemon immediately begins, restoring blood fluidity and gently activates digestion. Prioritize whole, nutrient-dense breakfasts, steel-cut oats topped with fresh berries for fiber, antioxidants, and glucose. Control. Whole grain toast with avocado or natural nut butter for healthy fats, a hard-boiled egg with leafy greens for clean protein and vital micronutrients, unsweetened herbal teas or black coffee with simple natural flavor enhancements. Eliminate artificial sweeteners and processed creamers entirely. Train your taste buds back to nature's flavors. Minimize sodium by avoiding processed breakfast meats and choosing fresh, unprocessed protein sources. With every small change, your cardiovascular system begins to stabilize. Inflammation decreases. Blood pressure normalizes. Blood sugar swings flatten. Endothelial function improves. Plaques become less vulnerable. Numerous studies have shown that even modest dietary improvements reduce cardiovascular risk by up to 50%, even in seniors well into their 70s and 80s. Every morning gives you a new opportunity to protect your most vital organ, your heart, seniors. You've spent a lifetime building your health. Don't let silent breakfast mistakes rob you of vibrant years ahead. Start tomorrow morning with a breakfast that truly honors your heart. Your future self will thank you.